you say?
Good morning, my dear brother.
Y'all ready?
Let's go.
Got a whole bunch of questions for y'all. I'm coming for y'all. I'm coming for y'all.
Hey, guess what? I got no answers for you. Ask away.
Yeah, I was wondering where you was, bro. Then I forgot. I was like, wait, he lives like right around the corner. So yeah.
Yeah, man, I've been working very, very busy. She got a ham radio for you, helping direct traffic.
Running around.
I actually left mine. I left mine downstairs. I did.
Yeah. Ghost, did you want to tell me what push people to the rooms?
Ariel, where was your
Yes.
wedding?
Yes, sir.
Where was your wedding?
Wait.
Where?
DC.
Nice.
Yeah, we both went University of Maryland undergrad together. So we were all looking around. He's Jamaican, I'm Jamaican, so we're like, should we do it back home? But he's American.
He's Jamaican.
Yeah, but like strong Jamaican.
Yeah.
Remember like layers?
Yes, yes,
Like he
yes.
cooks Jamaican food and
Yes.
his mom. So yeah, anyways, I'm just always surrounded by these Jamaican, so that's true. Yeah, so we were like, you know what, UND, Maryland has been a big part of our story regardless. We have a house in Laurel, so found a place in DC, place outside DC. So, yeah, pretty much. Let me tell you, you better get into the wedding industry with your mom and this is going, okay?
Weddings?
You know?
Yeah, I've been thinking about that for years.
This is the time.
What I want to do is I want to purchase like a rural property. And yes, they make so much money. Yeah. And you don't even have to
my God. You know what? That's real.
That's real.
That's real.
Let me know when it's good.
Let me go ahead and invest this in some stock in this.
Hey, bro, that's worse than a
Wait, what
million.
did you do? Just like what?
Me alone.
All right. I was about to say, I hope you didn't actually say that. Oh, I should be like, yeah, we need to rethink this.
Okay, so whenever you're ready. Okay, y'all, we're gonna start, okay? Okay. Good morning. Welcome to day 4 of the 10th annual CEEJH Environmental Justice and Health Disparity Symposium. My name is Ariel Wharton. I am a climate change and environmental justice specialist within CEEJH. We are so happy to be here for our 3rd Climate Justice Fellows session. Within CEEJH, the Climate Justice Fellows Program is a groundbreaking initiative that is a 21-week immersive hybrid training and implementation program. It is designed to equip individuals with essential knowledge about environmental justice and climate justice principles. So I mentioned 21 weeks. So the first 10 weeks of this program is we focus on training modules. So these modules can focus on topics surrounding environmental justice, environmental health, green initiatives, food justice and food sovereignty, climate adaptation initiatives, and the list goes on. The remaining parts of this module, of this program, I should say, focuses on a capstone project. Now, the capstone project provides an opportunity for fellows to apply the knowledge and skills that they have gained throughout the program to a real-world problem within communities. Now, by addressing a local environmental or climate challenge, these cohort members can make a positive impact within their partner community and actively bolster environmental and climate justice initiatives. The Climate Justice Fellows Program places a significant emphasis on this capstone project, which serves as a culminating experience for our cohort members. So today we are joined by our fellows, 3 of our fellows. So we have Christian Weaver, who's the VP of Philanthropy of Grid Alternatives. We have Kiana Spates, APHA's Center for Climate, Health, and Equity Program Associates. And we also have Samiha Hoke, who is an editor and within a New York-based press, Shahrazad Shelves. So welcome, everybody, to our session. We are so excited to hear your presentations and the work that you've been doing within communities and the work that you intend to do beyond the program's culmination. Our first fellow is Samiha Hoke. Samiha, you have the floor. Welcome, Samiha. Oh, Samiha, sorry, you are muted. Sorry about that. Oh, I think you're still muted. On your Zoom itself, yes.
Oh, how about now?
There we go.
Can you guys hear me now? Okay, so should I try now?
Yes, you're
Okay.
perfect.
Okay, great. So hi everyone. Thank you for having me here. As Ariel said, my name is Samiha, and I'm an editor for Shahrazad Shelves, a New York-based book publisher that promotes racial and religious justice through fiction literature. As an editor and daughter of immigrants, the preservation of culture is crucial to the work that I do. And that is why I believe discussing foods, the intersection of food sovereignty and cultural preservation for my capstone project. So why food sovereignty? So food sovereignty relates to reconciling the injustices that create food access disparities, particularly in Black and other communities of color. The reason I chose this topic actually begins decades ago in a small South Asian country called Bangladesh. Bangladesh has a history of man-made famines during 200 years of British colonialization and war. The picture on the right is of my maternal grandfather, born in the early 1910s. We don't have the exact date because it was a little difficult to track back then. And he has witnessed and lived and lived through World War I, World War II, the partition of India and Pakistan in 1947, and Bangladesh's own liberation war from Pakistan in 1971. And each of those wars created famines in the region during and after. So on top of these wars, Bangladesh's infrastructure was practically non-existent until recently. So they were lacking in roads that made travel to towns and markets difficult. And the British had imposed high taxation. So even if they did get access to food, it was at high prices. So this is why my grandfather dedicated his life to being food sovereign. My mother recalled raising chickens, having multiple herb gardens and plots of land with fruit and berry trees that allowed her family to survive, while many other families have tragic stories during this era. My grandfather's legacy, though, as a farmer and a survivor, didn't last. The picture on the left is a tree-lined view of my grandfather's home. While it looks green, what you're seeing are betel nut trees. And it's important to know that betel nut trees do not offer any food source. You usually just sell the fruit that it makes, and it's not for very much. And so when I visited in 2015 and took this picture, I didn't see any of the wildlife that my mother said she grew up with. There were no butterflies, no foxes, there were anything like that. However, my mother's backyard garden in Brooklyn is a different story. From long bean, bitter gourd, and Asian pumpkin is because my mother didn't forget about my grandfather's hardships that I have been able to eat and know the native vegetables my grandfather and his ancestors ate before him. And that is why I wholeheartedly believe that food sovereignty directly relates with cultural preservation. For these reasons, I was immediately drawn to Ujama seeds when I was introduced to it during the capstone program. Ujama seeds is part of the Ujama Cooperative Farming Alliance, or UCFA, a program within the nonprofit STEAM Onward. UCFA's goal is to diversify America's seed business industry by working with schools, farming resources, and merchandising. I was especially excited to work with founder Bonita Adib when she explained that the first seeds they sold were focused on the biodiversity of the collard as a means of preserving Black American heritage. As you can see, they have the Heirloom Collard Project here, and Ujama seeds has since grown to accommodate important herbs and vegetables from other parts of the world, including South Asia, which is why they have something called the Asian Garden. So this leads me to the capstone project that I began for Ujama Seeds. With my skills, the goal was to create a social media campaign to increase their visibility and encourage more people to learn about the importance of food sovereignty. The social media posts would include simple recipes and health benefits of the seeds sold at Ujama Seeds from their Asian garden, as well as holiday posts to create engagement within the South Asian community specifically. So the initial objectives were to include weekly updates, and thus far, I have been able to create 6 holiday posts targeting Hindu, Muslim, and Sikh festivals, which are the 3 major religions in the South Asian community. I'll be going over the holidays that I created. So the first 3 posts that you're seeing here are the major holidays, including Diwali, the Festival of Farmers, and the South Asian New Year. You'll notice the candle and lotus decorations on these posts, which are important symbols in Hinduism and Sikhism. You'll see the mandala background design, which is an Indian artistic geometry, and the graphics that all show traditional clothing and festival activities like dancing and the creating of a rangoli, which is the circular flower pattern here for good luck on the left-hand post. The next 3 posts cover all of the Islamic holidays, including the month of Ramadan, Eid al-Fitr, and Eid al-Adha. Because not all Muslims are South Asian, these posts showcase a variety of clothing styles and from different cultures. In addition to these holiday posts, I was able to begin setting up the graphics for the 4 recipes. This involved choosing 4 seeds from the Asian garden and researching each one to introduce and motivate people to buy them. So I chose fenugreek, bitter melon, long bean, and red Malabar spinach. In my native language of Bangla, fenugreek is called methi, bitter melon is called kherala, long bean is called lubi udi, and red Malabar spinach is called foishag. So here they are. As you can see, the post lists 3 benefits for each plant and has near identical typography and design to make it look visually appealing and to appear as one series, which is what I was aiming for. So you'll see here that the picture of the long bean and the bitter melon are from myself. In fact, the bitter melons are from my mother's garden. So currently, I was only able to make complete 1 of the 4 recipes due to a few hiccups and time constraints. However, I specifically ensured that at least this recipe for bitter melon stir fry was made because bitter melon is extremely good for you, but because of its bitterness, hence the name, not many people know how to cook it. That is except for South Asians. It's really common to see older adults eating bitter melon stir fry. This recipe is simple and includes info on how and when to eat the bitter melon. For example, one of the tips is to eat the stir fry at the beginning of your meal, as that's the custom my parents taught me, so that the bitterness kind of doesn't linger in your mouth, but because you started at the beginning of the meal. I'd also say the optional onions listed in the ingredient list is actually a pretty good idea because the onions will help absorb some of the bitterness, so you don't, without sacrificing any of the health benefits. So because of the nature of the work, it's social media, and you have to post these holidays when they happen. We don't currently have any results from the communities, and it's a little bit hard to measure, but I do think it will be received well when the time comes. So the greatest challenge for this project was coming up with the recipes. A lot of South Asians don't cook using standard measurements. They usually go by visuals and what feels right. Since there's no way to measure that, cooking based on vibes is like a cultural practice and something that you get taught. I'd say the lesson I learned from this challenge was to embrace it. I ended up preparing the bitter melon stir fry myself, and then I had to cross-reference that with how my mom made it, and then with a couple of other South Asian chefs on YouTube to finalize the recipe. So while I still have 3 recipes to come up with to complete my project with Hijama seeds, I really enjoyed being able to tap into my culture for this entire process. It only furthered my passion that food, and by extension, food sovereignty, is the backbone of cultural heritage. Lastly, I want to sincerely thank Bonita Adiba and her husband Hassan for taking the time to speak and work with me. It's been an honor participating in their work. And of course, I want to show my gratitude to Ariel, Dr. Wilson, and the senior fellows at the University of Maryland for this opportunity. I'm so incredibly thankful and grateful I was able to learn, network, and support this community organization fighting for climate justice. So thank you all for listening. And, yeah.
Do we have any questions for Samia? Okay, thank you so much, Samia. Wow, wonderful. And working with Bonita and Hassan, I'm sure was, I had a conversation with her yesterday and she said it was wonderful collaborating with you and hopes to have you on continuing moving into the future. So thank you so much. Woohoo, another hand for Samia. Next up, we have Christian Weaver. So come on down, Christian. Spin the wheel.
Is the PowerPoint going to be loaded up?
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
Good to go? Good morning, everyone. Come on. Good morning, everyone. There we go. It is an honor to spend some time with you this morning. My name is Christian Weaver. I'm a citizen of the Shinnecock Tribal Nation from Long Island, New York. I live here in Silver Spring, Maryland. I serve as the Vice President of Philanthropy for Grid Alternatives. I'm also a Managing Director for Shinnecock Energy, Shinnecock Power, and Osprey Media. and I'm honored to be a fellow here at CEEJH through the University of Maryland. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about my capstone project, which is working to build a DC Green Jobs Hub here in Washington, D.C. Next, thank you. What we're working to do is to work with Empower DC and Grid Alternatives to apply for an EPA Community Change Grant to fund a green job hub in the Ivy City neighborhood of Washington, D.C. Show of hands, who has heard of Ivy City before? Awesome. So many of you have. For those that haven't, Ivy City is an area in Washington, D.C. that is one of the oldest African American communities here in the district and in the nation. Back in the mid-1800s, there was a Baltimore and Ohio Railroad that was being built from Baltimore into the district, and it was coming into this area that is now Ivy City in Washington, D.C. At the same time, there was some developers that were looking at this big plot of land that was family owned, and there was a dream to make this an African American community, a subdivision of African American families here in Washington, D.C. I think there was probably about 107 different plots of land back then in the 1870s that were being sold, parceled out, and sold primarily to African American families. At the time, they were selling the plots of land for $100, which is today's money is about $2,500 in today's currency. So a little bit of inflation there, but it was created specifically for African Americans. At the time, though, while the plots were significantly sizable, the actual buildings were basically shacks. So they didn't have electricity, didn't have heat, and they used just the city's water lines for drinking water and run tap into the homes. Over a number of years, Ivy City became a really big industrial area of the district. So you had the railroad coming in, and there was other types of industries that were being built up here in Ivy City, which was great for the families that were there because it allowed for employment and sustainability within those communities. Unfortunately, what comes with the industrial complex is environmental injustice. And from 1870 up to today, while the neighborhood has remained an historic African American community, it has gone through turmoil from then to now around the industries that have plagued that area. And it has seen a lot of different industries in the area. And there was, even in the 1800s and early 1900s, a racetrack that was built in Ivy City where they were racing horses. And obviously the railroad was there. There was a lot of rail cars. There was also a garbage incinerator that was built in the neighborhood and producing a lot of environmental harm to the surrounding communities. That eventually went defunct, but in the early, I think the 2000s or the 1990s maybe, another garbage incinerator was put back into the neighborhood. So the neighborhood has seen a lot of change over the years, but has remained a primarily industrial zoned neighborhood. And with that industry has produced significant environmental injustice and poverty in Ivy City. There's been not much growth and new development in the city, though neighboring to it is an area that many of you might know is Union Market, which also was an industrial area and a very much warehouse district. But if you went to Union Market today, you would see that over the last couple of years, it has had significant growth and expansion. New businesses have gone in, and there's a Trader Joe's there now, and a lot of new buildings going in. So That's a little bit about Ivy City. Within Ivy City, there is a nonprofit called Empower DC, in which is the partner, excuse me, the community partner that I've been partnered with to execute my capstone project and execute this green job hub in Ivy City. Next slide, please. A little bit about Empower DC. Since 2003, Empower DC has advanced racial, economic, and environmental justice by investing in leadership and organized political power of DC's lowest income residents and communities. They are very much a grassroots organization. One of their co-founders, Parisa, is still the executive director of Empower DC, and they are a staple within Ivy City. They've been there for 21 years and have just done remarkable jobs for advocating for the health, sustainability, and success of the community members that live within Ivy City. Next slide, please. Can we play this video real quick? Is that possible? I just want to show you a video of one of the leaders within Empower DC talking about the housing situation within Ivy City. So if we can get it to play, fantastic. If not, it's okay. If not, I can probably play it on my laptop and just set my laptop up top here. I got you. You got it? Awesome. Thank you.
One of the things that I like about Empower DC is that you guys have been a shining light. You let me know that this fight is not my own. I'm not alone in it. You've taught me how to give my voice more definition. In fact, when you look up the word empowerment, it says giving someone the authority or the power to do something. Make someone stronger, confident, especially when it comes to controlling their life and claiming their rights. So for this, I thank you.
Empower DC does tremendous work in Washington, D.C., and specifically in Ivy City. It's a true testament to the co-founders of their tenacity and the fact that they still are thriving in the community. And they are a really small organization. They work on a shoestring budget, and their executive director handles most of their grant opportunities by herself. As I mentioned earlier, I work for an organization called Grid Alternatives. We are an international nonprofit that works at the intersection of renewable energy infrastructure, workforce development, and energy policy, both at the federal and state level. We do a lot of solar installations, so we supply solar for free for low to moderate income families and communities all across the United States, in Nicaragua, Nepal, Mexico, and Puerto Rico as well. We also do an abundance of workforce development. So we have a couple of different training curriculums that we implement. One is called Installation Basic Training, which we call IBT. We have IBT 120 and IBT 200. And this trains
Sure.
folks on how to install solar for free to low to moderate income families and communities. Can you hear me over there? Yeah. Yeah.
You don't have to be on the spot right now, but you can tell me. Think about it.
Welcome in.
Yeah. Can you hear me? Yeah.
We're going to get started in just a minute. I'm
I've got
waiting
a
on the
booming
AV
voice, so
folks to
hopefully
give me
you
the
can still
thumbs up.
hear me. Thanks for your flexibility.
So keep talking.
So
amongst
anyway, so
yourselves.
GRID does an awful lot of work around workforce development all across the United States and other countries and territories. We are really adamant about preparing community members to be the change within communities, right? So we don't want to be the organization that just goes in and leaves. We want to make sure that we are preparing community members to be the change around renewable energy and clean energy infrastructure in the United States and abroad. So we do that through our installation basis training curriculum, where we literally teach people how to install solar on roofs and how to do operational maintenance for solar projects. We also have a fellowship program called Solar Core, which is an 11-month-long fellowship program that instructs folks on various different capacities in the renewable energy spectrum. So anything from installations to accounting, fundraising, the spectrum is pretty wide there. We've been running Solar Core for I think maybe 15 years or so. Many of the folks that are now full-time employees at GRID were once Solar Core fellows, so we're really adamant about creating jobs within Solar Core. We've got, I work for the headquarters. I run a fundraising team. We've got about 200 or so people that work at headquarters and another 300 or so people that work in the various offices around the
Exactly.
world. So about 500 employees total. So we're a little bit larger than Empower DC, but that makes us a really
We are good to go.
Partner.
Welcome,
Empower.
folks.
So when I was
Good afternoon.
given Empower as
Did everyone have their cinnamon roll?
I sat down.
Okay.
with the executive
No.
director.
Okay. Well, maybe that's the problem.
I'd love
Good
to do a
afternoon.
capstone project with you. What are your needs?
It's so nice to see
She was
everyone. My
sharing
name
that
is Amy
they
Laura Khan.
don't
I go by
have-
Amy Laura,
next
or
slide,
ALC.
please.
I am here on behalf of the Title VI Alliance.
she
I
was
convene the
sharing that
Alliance, which
they
is a
really
coalition
don't
that brings
have,
together advocates, attorneys, and community members
a
working
great
at the
office
intersection of
space, and
civil
they're looking for
rights
something new.
and environmental, climate,
and
housing,
they're looking
transportation,
to,
and disaster justice. And I want to just hand it to my panelists to introduce themselves. We're just going to go down the
Iowa
line.
City is very industrial, so there's lots of warehouses. They want to purchase a warehouse, and they want to create a green jobs hub for Washington, D.C., which would be fantastic. Obviously, they have the community buy-in and trust, but they need a partner to come in and actually do the trainings within the Green Jobs Hub. So this is our challenge statement. Currently in the U.S., women own only 8%, 8.8% of construction businesses compared to 20% of businesses ownership across the economy. Black business ownership in construction is at 1.2% compared to 2.1%
Thanks,
for
folks.
the entire economy.
So we're really glad to be here,
comprising of
and we
43% of the
don't have time to
GDP.
go and hear
Small
everyone's name
businesses
in this room,
catalyze
although
wealth
I want to,
generation.
and maybe after the
Research
fact.
shows that the
But we do want to
minority
get a little bit of a
of,
sense of who's in the room,
that
so I'm
minority
just going to ask a
women
couple of
business
questions of
owners
y'all to
hold
say,
significantly more
who
wealth
in this room is an
than
organizer?
non-business owner counterparts. As we look at IU
legal
City,
advocates.
and as we look at
Any
the
legal
poverty and
advocates?
unemployment rates,
Educators.
both GRID and Empower.
Sort
believe
of
that
is a
if
yes.
we invest,
many of us are
in job
educators,
creation
even if
in
it's not
IU
our
City
official role.
and Washington, D.C.,
Scientists.
then not only are we creating jobs, we're creating
We love our
generational
scientists.
wealth,
Farmers.
We're also creating jobs and
Any farmers in the
generational
room?
wealth,
Okay,
in
well,
an
I got a
industry that
maybe
is,
over there. Are folks growing their own food?
solution-based,
Anyone?
for the
Yes,
residents
yes.
of not
Awesome.
only IU
Students?
City, but Washington, D.C. and its
Folks working in the
surrounding,
public sector?
neighborhoods, so the DMV area.
Our governmental
So
folks?
this is something that we're really
Thank you for being
passionate
here.
about
Yes.
being
We want you in the room.
solution-based,
Anything that I
or,
missed?
project,
Any like real, any
and
important
building
hat that you're
something
wearing
is
that I
actually
didn't name?
a pipeline to
Entrepreneurs, any
sustainability,
entrepreneurs? Okay.
Reducing poverty, not only just reducing
anything
poverty rates,
else?
but actually creating generational
Oh, a
wealth
physician.
in our community.
Yes,
Reducing
absolutely. Any other
poverty
medical
rate isn't
professionals?
just enough for us.
Healthcare
We
workers.
want to
rock on.
changed the landscape.
And we
of
also
the
know
community
folks are
members
wearing
in
multiple
Ivy
hats.
City. So 20 years
And
from now,
coming into the
someone else
room,
is
this
standing
is,
here
you are here
talking
for
about,
Title VI at
how
60,
wealthy
Tools to
people
Advance
in
and
Ivy
Preserve
City
Civil
are,
Rights
because
for
they're
Environmental
creating business
Justice.
for themselves and doing
Coming
it,
into this room,
in
how
the
many
face
of you
of
are already
renewable
familiar with Title VI
and
of the Civil
clean
Rights Act of 1964?
Next slide, please.
Okay. How
This
many
is a
of
little bit
you
about our
are
theory of
using
change.
Title VI in your
I won't read the
advocacy
whole thing to you,
currently?
But basically,
Good to know.
restating what I just
Hopefully
went
everyone
through,
raised their hand over
our
here.
fossil fuel base
And
executive
how many of you are
executive
concerned about the
economy
future of Title
increases
VI?
economic and environmental inequities, limiting
Yep,
access
yep,
to the benefits
absolutely.
and opportunities of
So
the
we're going to
urban
talk about
energy.
all of these things,
So to achieve
just a little bit of a
energy and
sense of the
wealth
run of the
equity
show.
for underserved populations,
We're all going to
we
give
must
some
recognize
short
that environmental
presentations,
justice communities, BIPOC
starting with a
communities,
little bit of an
and women
introduction
are
to
an
Title VI
integral part of the
and
clean
some of
energy
the
movement.
headwinds that we're facing with Title VI, and then some case studies of the work that folks are doing on the ground. And then ending with some of the kind of potentials for reforms. So you'll get a little bit of a lay of the land. And then we want to make this a bit interactive, so we're going to have a question for you, and you can start to mull this, but to start thinking about like how you might want to be using Title VI in your advocacy as a tool to advance environmental and climate justice. So you're going to have a chance to talk to your neighbor, and we'll hear a few answers. You'll have a chance to ask questions of all of these folks, and we definitely are leaving a big chunk of time to that. And then we're going to end with a little bit of an interactive exercise to think about what is our vision for civil rights going forward. So, you know, we have the potential to make change, and we need to, and so we're going to have a little bit of a visioning moment at the end. So that's our run of show. Hopefully you're with us along for the ride. And I'm just going to start by giving a little bit of an introduction to this statute. And I'm going to do some reading because it's a little text-based, so I've got some notes here. But Title VI of the Civil Rights Act of 1964 states that no person in the United States shall, on the ground of race, color, or national origin, be excluded from participation in, be denied the benefits of, or be subjected to discrimination under any program or activity receiving federal financial assistance. I'm gonna break that down in a minute, but I just want to talk about the intent for a second to say Title VI, the passage of Title VI followed on the Brown versus Board of Education case coming out of the Supreme Court, and it was intended to invalidate funding statutes that allowed for separate but equal distribution. It was supposed to establish that federal agencies could enforce non-discrimination policies, provide uniformity rather than across agencies. So rather than having to have this non-discrimination language in every statute, we have this one statute that says this is prohibited, and the prohibition is a prohibition against any federal subsidies of discriminatory practices. In practice,
It's a good
I really,
question.
I find this story
well-versed
quite
in
moving.
that
A year
answer.
after the
I
passage
do know
of
that there's,
Title VI
so
and the Civil
been
Rights
the
Act
coal
as a
industry
whole,
that's been there. There
President
is,
Johnson signed into law the passage of Medicare
waste,
Act, which provided financial
there's
support
actually
to
a company
hospitals
called
for
the,
medical care to seniors,
it's like the
a
DC
cost that had
Environmental
previously gone
something or other
uncompensated.
company that
And one
bills
history
itself as an
describes this
environmental
as
company, but
follows.
it's basically just a
With
a
one
waste
stroke, I guess
company
2 strokes,
that's
first
gone
the
in
Civil Rights
there.
Act and then
There's been also
the Medicare
a lot
Act,
of,
more than 7,000
adult,
hospitals were subject to
entertainment,
civil rights regulations set forth in
establishments
Title
that have
VI
gone
of the
to
Civil
the
Rights
Ivy
Act.
City. And
So,
those are the industries that have
suddenly we had all of
been
these
in and around
institutions
Ivy
that
City
had been
for
operating in discriminatory
decades.
ways,
I don't know whether or not they've
subject to Title
actually,
VI.
like, turned
Title
money
VI
back
was
into the
intended
community,
to,
other than
from the start, invalidate both intentional discrimination, or what we call disparate treatment, as well as actions with the effect of discrimination, so what we call disparate impact, based on race, color, and national origin.
I think that is
And we have this very
technically
famous quote
union
from
market,
John
but
F.
I
Kennedy
don't
that
know
says, simple justice requires
or
that public
NOMA, I
funds
think
to
it's-
which all taxpayers
yeah.
of all races
I think
contribute
that's NOMA.
not be spent in any fashion which
But it's right on
encourages,
the, you're,
entrenches,
you're looking at the right
subsidizes, or
area.
results
Ivy
in
City
racial discrimination.
borders that. I
Direct
think if you go up
discrimination by
maybe
federal, state,
2 or
or
3
local
blocks,
governments is prohibited by the
towards
Constitution.
Maryland,
But indirect discrimination
Ivy City.
through the use of federal funds is just as invidious and should not be necessary. It should not be necessary to resort to the courts to prevent each individual violation. So we know that, you know, sometimes you have the smoking gun. You have the person saying this is because
Sure,
of race.
sure. I'm a
and
fellow
we are
through the
discriminating,
University of
but
Maryland,
it's so rare in this
through
day and
their,
age. And
CEEJH
really,
program.
on a
and,
day-to-day basis.
through our fellowship,
What's happening is implicit bias. What's
Ariel,
happening are
who's
things
in
with
the
the
back
effect
here,
of
has led us
discrimination.
through a
Sometimes
tremendous
also
curriculum
intentionally,
this past year
and sometimes it's a both
diving
and,
into
but we know
various,
we need to prevent both.
areas of environmental justice and climate justice.
Why
And
is
at
this
the
relevant
end
for
of our
environmental and
fellowship,
climate
we
justice?
have,
I think you all know this already, but
capstone projects
it applies
that we
broadly
have
to discrimination by recipients of funding from federal agencies
so
across the federal government, including environmental,
here,
agricultural,
there,
natural
and then-
resource,
oh,
land
sorry,
management,
here,
energy,
you,
disaster
and then
recovery
here.
agencies. And it has the potential to be one of the most salient tools to remedy the harms created by racial segregation and environmental racism, and to fill some of the gaps
I love the
that we
idea
know
of
exist
community
in our
gardens.
environmental,
I think
energy,
that would be a
property,
question
and
for
land use
Empower
laws.
DC.
And
of
their
what they
failure
wanted
to
to.
address
I went to
cumulative
Empower
and
and
disproportionate
asked them
impacts.
what project they wanted to do.
This is
and
alongside some
the
of our
Green
other
Job Hub
statutes,
is,
like
is
the
what
Fair
they
Housing
wanted to
Act
focus
and
on.
Section 504 of the Rehabilitation Act, which prohibits discrimination.
Yeah, so I'm
based
sure
on
if someone else went
disability.
to, and there may be
Title VI
community
is
gardens
also one of the
in
bases,
IBC, I'm not quite sure,
bases
but
underlying
if
our
someone else
executive
went to
orders on
Empower
environmental
DC
justice. So
and
the original
talked
one,
about opportunities
12989,
to build community gardens there.
898, sorry, and 14096, and there's a long history of using Title VI for law and organizing in the EJ space.
That would be amazing.
So
maybe,
just to unpack
maybe you
the
know somebody at
statute
the USDA.
a little bit. I said it protects all persons in the United States. That is regardless of immigration status. It includes private entities, but may not include cities, but all persons. This is not a question of citizenship.
Sure.
Race, color, or national origin includes any perceived race, color, or national origin. And national origin includes an individual's accent, ancestry, birthplace, culture,
Yeah.
immigration status, or language.
It's a great question. So we
It
look at it
covers recipients
from
of
a
federal
couple different
financial
facets,
assistance,
right? So we're
broadly defined. So all
obviously
of these
in the
grants and
energy
loans and things that
sector,
we're talking
there are
about
different
coming out of
types
the IRA.
of career paths. There are those folks that want to focus on installation. There are those folks that want to work on more of the business or investment side of projects, and there's other folks that want to run crews. So the idea through the Green Jobs Hub is to kind of give folks various different tools based upon what their intentions are. So for folks that are more prefer more of a blue collar type of career, we'll train up in that way and partner with other installers and companies in the DMV area. And hold job fairs and actually have a pipeline to those careers. Something else we're working on is something called the Mission Aligned Contractors Network. This is basically what we're doing on the grid side, but we would implement it through the Green Jobs Hub. Grid Alternatives was a recipient of the EPA Solar for All grant this past year. So we were awarded $300 million earlier this year to deploy renewable energy across 28 states plus Puerto Rico, which is great. But in order to do that, we don't have all of the crews ourselves to deploy renewable energy across all those states. So we're building out a mission-aligned contractor network to build that pipeline for BIPOC and women contractors to deploy that solar across the United States. Which is very important because what I mentioned earlier is that we want the ownership of the crews to be BIPOC and women. So in building that curriculum through the DC Green Job Hubs, we are then creating opportunities, trainings, and education for entrepreneurship. So not only will you have the skills to be an installer, but you also have the skills to run your own crew and create your own business. So creating long-term generational wealth.
Yeah, and I'm sorry. I know the solar grant. I heard about it. I think a lot of times, we have these grants that come out, and then sometimes you don't see them again, right?
Sure.
And then, I guess what is how do you make these jobs more permanent in a way, when you have things like that that's happening, where they might be one-off grants, or it might be something that's in the now, but how is that something, futuristic that we can actually guarantee for people that's actually being a part of this and that's getting these skills that they have access to actually use them in their community?
That's a fantastic question. I think we're at an unprecedented time here in the United States where the amount of funding that is being allocated by the current administration is unprecedented. Fingers crossed that come November, those funds are still secure. That's all I'll say about that. But because of this unprecedented investment in renewable energy projects across the United States, we are going to see these types of careers catapulting for the next 20 to 30 years, right? And you're starting to see a shift now with the infrastructure of electric mobility across the United States. And in states like California, where electric mobility policy is robust, and you'll see probably 4 times as many electric vehicles on the road than you do in North Dakota. That's today, but I think in 5-6 years' time, states like North Dakota and South Dakota will catch up, right? Because that infrastructure is being built. And so if the infrastructure is being built, and the Biden administration is creating policy and deploying financial resources to the industry, you're going to see a shift from coal and gasoline and other minerals that are extracted to more clean, renewable industries, and thus the jobs will come after that.
You active in Maryland at all with Grid?
Yeah, so Grids, where our office is technically DC based, but we serve the DMV, primarily PG County in Maryland, a little bit of Montgomery County, but mostly DC, PG County, and a little bit of Virginia as well, Northern Virginia.
Yeah, I have one question, but I remember you had a question over here.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Can I maybe ask a question that might build on, I think, one of your questions?
Oh, yeah.
So I'm not in this space and don't know a lot of the technical details, but I guess my question is, like, just reading a little bit about grid alternatives and your board and funding and stuff, I'm just wondering if you brought in some expertise, I would call it science expertise, social science expertise, about how to do these things in ways that are going to have the most lasting effect, I guess, on generational wealth. I don't know that I'm posing the question exactly right. It's not my expertise, but I do feel like, as a scientist, that there are scientists that do have that expertise. It's not me, and that it might be a good. I'm wondering if you guys are like working with that on your board or with local, universities, or that think about like how to make this. Make the big change, whether it's making more company owners versus people that are installing, or I don't know what the.
Yeah, so I think what you're asking is, what is the proof of concept of our work, of our mission? So,
I guess I'm trying to think of the long term.
yeah.
Like,
How are you building that in to make?
like I don't know, like if you make I don't know enough about economies, like to know, like if you make jobs in an area, but then it's not the business owners, like, where does I guess I just don't know what makes the longer lasting impact on generational wealth, and then also as far as it staying local or all of those things that I feel like social scientists might know the answers to.
Yeah, to your question, I think yes. So the answer is yes. We have brought in and are continuing to bring in policy experts that direct us, policy experts and scientists, social scientists, that direct us in the avenues that are going to create the impact that we want. We're continuing to. Are we on? We have time?
I was just going to say, I want to be mindful of, we still have one more presentation.
Okay.
So finish what you're saying, but
Sure.
we can speak to Christian after he's.
Yeah, we're continuing to.
Session,
Yeah, thank you. We're continuing to evolve. So Grid was started 20 years ago by 2 engineers. Tim Sears and Erica Mackey are still our co-CEOs. They started, they quit their jobs in corporate America and started doing wind installation in California, and now we've done thousands across the globe. And in that process, we're continuing to learn about our impact and bring in people that are smarter than us to direct us on how we can continuously make more impact in various markets and cities around the country. Not every city is the same. So Detroit is very different than Los Angeles. San Diego is very different than DC. But we are listening to community partners like Empower DC and other community partners that are telling us what the needs are in those communities and bringing in experts to help us direct in that space. I think that's one of the reasons why we've been so successful and why entities like the EPA have entrusted us with $300 million to deploy solar across the United States and abroad. Yeah. Thank you so much for the great questions. I'm happy after my distinguished colleague presents her fantastic capstone to stick around a little bit and answer any more questions that you might have. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Christian. And I just want to briefly, before we go into Kiana Spate's presentation, I just want to also say that within the Climate Justice Fellows Program, it is an 18-plus professional fellowship program. So our youngest fellow is 18, and we have about 2 70-year-olds who are young and thriving as well. So the point of the program is not necessarily these folks are students, but we wanted to also connect them with some of the community hub partners that CEEJH already has established relationships with, so that they can go forth and lend their expertise to our hub partners. So basically, we connected them to our Match and Tic-Tac hub partners. I know you've heard Match and Tic-Tac continuously over the past 4 days. And so whatever the hub partner needs, our fellows will lend their expertise in that space. So we have South Baltimore Community Land and Trust, Shoshana Campbell and Toby Harris in the back. We have SUIA, which is Southward Environmental Alliance. It literally slipped from Newark, New Jersey, Kim Gaddy. And we also have, I see Chelsea Barnes from Appalachian Voices in the back. And of course, Empower DC. So we are blessed to have these relationships, and we are blessed to have our fellows work with these partners. So last but certainly not least, we have Kiana Spates, who is working with SBCLT. So welcome, Kiana.
Hi, everyone. Good morning. My name is Kiana Spates. I go by they, them pronouns. And I'm going to be presenting my capstone project that is in progress with South Baltimore Community Land Trust. Whenever the PowerPoint gets up there. Yes, so I titled this presentation, My New Relationship with South Baltimore, because indeed it is very new. I am still very new to the Baltimore area, and I think with working with South Baltimore Community Land Trust, I think I'm gonna be able to connect with the community more and actually make some change for impact. You can go to the next slide. So who am I? I am a Black, queer, African, Southern identity from South Carolina. A multimedia artist. I'm a child of the earth, a friend, a reader, an observer. I am also an EJ activist and community scientist. And I would say something that fuels my activism and work career field-wise. EJ allows me to grasp the understanding of what's going on in the community, and also knowing that data should reflect the injustices that are going on in a community. and represent what the community needs, not what high-level experts think that a community should need. And I've only been a resident within Baltimore for about 8 months. And I live in the Mount Vernon area, and I've built a small community here. And I titled this presentation, My New Relationship with Baltimore, because coming in as an EJ activist to come work with my community group, based on what they've told me, it was very shocking to hear, because I felt like moving in within these last 8 months, it did not take me long to recognize the different environmental injustices that are just in Baltimore City, period. And so when hearing the difficulties of the community of South Baltimore, I am confused and angry for them, because again, it's not like hidden, it's not like a silent killer. It's very apparent on what's going on. You can go to the next slide. Calling in EJ principles, I feel like during this CEEJH fellowship, the 17 principles was very driven into our head, and apparently if we did not know them, we were not an EJ activist. So I just wanted to, I'm not gonna read them to you, but I wanted to call in these principles when in talking about my capstone project today. So you can go into the next slide. There's supposed to be, yep, a video. Just wanted to explain why I'm here. So I am partnered up with South Baltimore Community Land Trust, and they have expressed to me that a big issue, environmental issue that's been going on in their community is a lot of air pollution due to a lot of big industrial facilities coming in and just kind of being extractive, disinvesting into the community and kind of creating a sacrifice zone, basically. So this video, yes, this video is of Dr. Melanie Thomas, and is being held at a city council hearing to address the CSX coal explosion that happened in the community. And it was a city council hearing of different community members coming in and telling what happened and why, kind of just why is there even a need to kind of have a city council hearing when there's a coal explosion and it's impacting people's respiratory systems, it's impacting their public health, having coal dust on your house, having to see your children sweat coal dust, and how ridiculous this is. But yes, you can play the video.
I'm Melanie Thomas, Councilwoman, Chair, pleasure. I am a resident in Curtis Bay, Brooklyn community. I've been a resident for 16 years. And you've heard everyone's testimony so far. The day of the explosion, I remember I was standing in my kitchen, and I am about 12 blocks from where the coal facility is. It felt like someone picked up the house and dropped it back down. If that is not a disaster or a hazard, I mean, I was a little bit disturbed, not a little bit, I was a lot disturbed hearing that we don't know what this was classified as. If coal is a hazard, it's a hazard, right? And we should call it what it is. And what we experience and what we continue to see in our community is this passing or this just dismissal of tragedies, trauma that people are enduring. We live and we see trauma every single day, and these explosions and things like this, occurrences like this, cause further trauma and harm. And with the South Baltimore Community Land Trust, we're doing development of housing that is directly across from where the explosion occurred. What is happening to our foundations of the homes that people are investing in? We already pay high enough property taxes. We don't have the resources to be able to fix what's being affected by explosions such as this. The city is promising millions of investment to the new Curtis Bay Recreation Center that is right across the street from the explosion. When are we going to step up and demand and call it what it is, outright injustice that is embedded in racism? That's exactly what it is. We talked about Wagner's Point and Fairfield being removed and these communities being wiped out. We will not be wiped out in Curtis Bay. We will not. We will continue to stand up and raise our voice and be here to really shout until someone hears. I don't know what it's going to take for someone to really take action, but we have been let down far too often. And everyone under the sound of our voices, I hope that today is the day that that changes, that we demand CSX and everyone be held accountable for what they are doing to our communities, to the livelihood of our people. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Is that for me?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So I certainly, first of all, let me just share that I have had the privilege
Could be a good time, so next month we're having on the 10th just a community follow-up hearing from this suggest that the efforts are still, ongoing. Kind of really cool.
Yes, thank you. Okay. Yeah, so I placed this map here so you all, if you aren't familiar with the Baltimore area, to see where Curtis Bay is. Curtis Bay community is a sacrifice zone, and just also learning from Shashande a couple days ago, there's about 70 facilities within the small community alone, which you can see that it's not a big community, and 70 facilities is nuts. So in 2008, South Baltimore's 21226 zip code registered the highest quantity of toxic air emissions from stationary sources. Curtis Bay houses oil tanks, wastewater plants, chemical plants, landfills, and the country's largest medical waste incinerator, in addition to a bunch of heavy diesel trucks that are going in and out of the area constantly that pollute the air. And in 2009, the proposal to build the largest trash burner incinerator in U.S. history was less than a mile from two schools in Curtis Bay and was greenlit by state and local officials. You can go to the next slide, sorry. So South Baltimore Community Land Trusts, they were established over a decade of research, reflection, and action initiated by high school students and South Baltimore residents. Since South Baltimore has been developed into a regional center for burning and burying hundreds of thousands of waste, there's like a continuation of extraction and disinvestment in the community, and those communities predominantly being Black and brown communities. South Baltimore Community Land Trust, they believe that these steps will create a healthy and sustainable community, establishing a just transition of zero waste fund for community recycling, composting, deconstruction and reuse of infrastructure, and subsidies for trash incinerators and landfills, and hopefully transitioning out of landfills and trash incinerators completely. building and strengthening local end markets for composting and recycled materials, and establishing protection for sanitation workers, and transitioning out of toxic and unhealthy approaches and technologies, and creating release funds for the communities that have been hosting these toxic waste facilities. You can go to the next slide. I titled this slide "The Facade in Progress" because after the Curtis Bay community went to the MDE, which is Maryland Department of Environment, about their concerns when it comes to all these facilities, especially CSX polluting their community, while also presenting evidence and data to the MDE about what's going on in their community. The MDE started an environmental justice bill, and the community was under assumption that this bill would actually address concerns, but it did not. They used the EJ issues kind of as a leveraging point of deciding what facilities was getting permits to do what. And a lot of those permits, obviously, they favored big corporations such as CSX, which is, they have a big relationship, CSX and Maryland officials, due to what CSX brings to Maryland fuel-wise. And a lot of those permits, they exclude air pollution, which is one of the top concerns in the Curtis Bay community. The bill also doesn't cover any permit to operate an already existing air polluting source, which includes none of the coal plants and the medical waste incinerator. And the bill mainly covers permits for discharge for surface water due to the heavy influence of the Chesapeake Bay water quality movement. And while water quality is very important, air pollution is a very top environmental injustice issue that is going on in the Curtis Bay community, and it's very much so being ignored. Can you go to the next slide? So what is the ask of the community? Invest in development of South Baltimore that protects the safety and the health of the people, the environments, and its inhabitants. What does this look like? Addressing the racist actions of using Curtis Bay area to burn toxic waste for new industrial development, acknowledging that people are being displaced and intoxicated, listening to what the community needs in terms of cleaning up the air and water contamination that keeps happening despite the health impacts that are being experienced, allow South Baltimoreans to lead what development looks like for their community that is not harmful, deadly, and extractive. You can go to the next slide. So, our project in progress. So I've been asked and taxed to help develop a survey with their environmental justice team for Maryland officials to complete. The point of the survey is to expand this space and depth for discussion and learning. Trying to grasp and understand that if we are bringing you this data and we're showing you this evidence, why are certain bills still not being pushed? Why are certain permits excluding air pollution? And what is the disconnect? And what is the excuse? Basically, trying to grasp the understand. So if you can't take science data and say, hey, this is what's actually happening to the people, well, then maybe qualitative data, getting the answer out of your mouth on why things are not being pushed will come up with a conversation. And I think also wanting to help this team kind of create like a community impact assessment kind of framework approach to this survey, because based on talking with my community group, it's not just Maryland officials that have impact or influence when it comes to decision makings that are happening in this community. So trying to find different stakeholders and kind of gain their understanding as well when serving these folks, to also use that as leverage of, okay, well, since our Maryland officials are very aware of what's going on in Curtis Bay, why aren't these being, like, why isn't there being more action towards Curtis Bay and trying to alleviate these environmental justice issues? It's very still in early phases. We're planning on trying to get something finalized by the end of September. And my hopes for moving forward when working with this community group is to be more active in the community and showing up to like the different public hearings, the different community meetings that are being held, and just figuring out any different way to kind of make sure it's help what's trying to be done here and shed light on what's happening. Because I don't even think a lot of people know what's happening in Curtis Bay, which is really sad, especially when I've noticed that there's more light shed on things like Chesapeake Bay or like cleaning up the Potomac River, which are all white areas. So yeah, and you can go to the next slide. And call to action, and just continuing the call to action that was given by South Baltimore Community Land Trust. Cutting ties with Curtis Bay Energy for anyone who works at a hospital or institution that may be sending medical waste to the trash incinerator. Mark your calendars because there's a public hearing on the CSX permit on Thursday, October 10th. And supporting genuine community-led cumulative impact policy coming to Maryland this legislative session. Take a minute for, and thank you. I can take any questions. Yes.
Well, first I want to thank you for engaging with the community. This is quite informative. I'm Kim Gaddy, Executive Director of the Southwood Environmental Alliance, and coming from Newark, New Jersey, where our community is a sacrifice zone. Have you ever thought about taking those leaders on an EJ tour? We was able to pass the strongest environmental justice cumulative impacts law in the state of New Jersey because we took those politicians on an EJ tour so they couldn't deny what was happening.
Yeah.
We let them taste what was, what was, and the smells, the taste, the seeing, and all of that, which then we was able to galvanize some EJ champions. So just wanted to, was that something you might be considering?
Yeah, please.
I'm just trying to look to South Baltimore Community Land Trust. We have done a lot of those toxic tours. We actually have a few of them coming up. And we have taken them, I think that's what this project is really about, is the fact that we have done those things. And some of them that we have invited, I ain't gonna lie, some of them declined. And so it's really, this project is not really a study of like SPCLT, but it's a study of these politicians that's calling themselves EJ champions, right? Zero waste champions. And so it's not really a survey that we're looking to be like open-ended questions, because they can talk their way out of anything. They can say anything. So it's really a yes or no kind of survey that's like, did you do this? Did you support this, right? And then it's like kind of like, we heard a lot of just like grading scales for different things, like even corporations talk about giving them A's, B's, C's, and things like that. I think it's really to put those politicians in a space to say like, you call yourself this, but based on this survey, you've done nothing. You know about these issues because we know you know. You've done nothing, right? And then one of the things that was talked about was like, our problem in Curtis Bay is that we have all these facilities, and so even when we're talking about one, it's really hard to then try to like fight that fight when you have all these other ones, right? And so we really needed a bill that's gonna address all of these facilities at one, which is a bill that we're working on in partnership with Coalition Magic, a cumulative impact bill, right? So what's happening all together like that in all of these different things, and looking at permits, like when you look at a permit, you gotta look at everything in the area. You can't just say, this facility's gonna do this and this is all we're permitting for, right? And so then we wanna put them in a space to then say, okay, you failed this time because of the grade that you've gotten. You did nothing. Like, you can't call yourself EJ champion, but you can make that transition to doing that by supporting these type of bills. So like even the RPS bill, renewable portfolio standards, giving reps to incinerator because it's top tier #1 right now, right? And then support that bill. Support the cumulative impact bill. And so that's really what the initiatives of this survey is to do, to put them in that hot seat to say like, you want to be EJ champion, you CEEJH champion things,
Mhm.
right?
And I mean, even at the Thursday evening, the evening session, Shoshana asked the delegate that sponsored that EJ bill, if they knew how the CSX coal terminal was classified. They didn't know, right? Like she's
It's
saying,
a-
they spit so much.
Right, so so in Curtis Bay, the facility is not even classified as a major facility. It's a it's a minor. So it's like you have to have a bill that to make sure that we're addressing all of those concerns.
And the politicians don't have that basic knowledge as they're talking, as they're writing the laws. It's part of, with the survey, again, just calling that out, simple yes, no answers. You don't even know what you're saying. You're, trying to respond. But thank you, that's a great question.
Okay, well, let's a round of applause for Solana.
Yes, so thank you everybody for attending our Climate Justice Fellows Session 3. We've had wonderful capstone presentations and projects and works in progress with our community partners. So we are so grateful for you all. Thank you to our fellows, the passion you've been putting into y'all, into your projects was wonderful. And we have a great lunchtime plenary happening right now as well. We did run a little bit over, so thanks for your patience and enjoy the rest of the conference.